It's a little terrifying because you absolutely cannot miss.
Goalies now are completely at a premium.
Not, right? Like, Canada doesn't have a ton of great options.
What's up, hockey fans? This is The Big Show. I'm Michael Traikos. With me, as always, hey, I can't get rid of this guy, is Ryan Kennedy, and we are pleased to be joined by former NHLer Drew Shore, who has played everywhere from Calgary and Carolina to Switzerland and Slovakia. Drew, really happy to have you join the show. Let's start off with you. The fact that you have played for the Florida Panthers. This Toronto Maple Leafs Florida Panthers series is 2-0 for the Leafs, but we're heading to Sunrise. Having played in Sunrise, Drew, does it get enough credit for how good of a home city and home crowd that the Panthers have there?
I don't think it does. And I think it's obviously changed a lot since I played there. We were one of the worst teams in the league when I played there. And I always used to say, right when I got traded out of there, that's when Vinny Viola bought the team and really kind of made a push to bring them to be one of the powerhouses in the league. And I mean, you see it now with free agents. I mean, a combination of no state tax, sunshine all the time, and they're super competitive has made it one of the best places in the league to play.
Ryan, Leafs have been in control of this series. William Nylander is just putting on a clinic. That second line with Pacioretty and John Tavares has just been lights out. How important are matchups going to be now that we're going from Toronto to Florida, where Paul Maurice is going to have the last change?
It's going to be really interesting because, we talked about this on the Playoff Frenzy Live last night. You kind of have to pick your poison with the Leafs. And, Florida does have the luxury of having two of the best defensive forwards in the league in Alexander Barkov and Sam Reinhart, both Selke nominees, which is like pretty wild for teammates to be two of the three nominees. But, we've seen a lot of Barkov Matthews in the first two games. Does Paul Maurice switch that up? Does he decide maybe that Barkov should be more on Nylander's line? It's going to be very interesting to see what adjustments are made, or if the Panthers just, kind of accept that they're going to have to pick their poison and they just need to play a better defensive game overall to slow down some of the big guns and the fast players that Toronto has.
Kind of reminds me of when I was covering the Leafs way back when they had Matt Sundin, and there was a time where the Mikhail Grabovski line was actually the more dangerous line. And I went into opposing dressing rooms being like, are you now matching up against the Grabo line, not the Sundin line? They said, no, as long as Sundin is there, that's your top line.
Right.
And Drew, if you're the Florida Panthers, is that how you see it? Like, as long as Matthews is there, is that your top line? Or, from what we've seen of Nylander, Pacioretty, and Tavares, as Ryan said, like, how do you pick your poison?
I mean, I think the Pacioretty add into the top six and him being able to regain the form that he had. I mean, like, obviously he had two Achilles surgeries that many guys I don't even know would have been able to come back. But I think people forget, I mean, he scored 30, 35 goals in the league for a long time. So you add him to their top six, which is desperately needed some heaviness to it. I mean, he's 6'2", 220 pounds and plays hard. And I think it completely changes the dynamic of their top six. And then going back to the matchup thing, you guys have been in hockey for so long. I'm interested to hear your opinion on this. But I think the delta in the game right now between the top guys and the middle lower tier is greater than it's ever been. So many people talk about the home ice advantage, but as you guys alluded to, I think that comes down to, I mean, Florida, yes, has a great crowd. Some buildings are tougher to play in, but I think having that last change, and it's been shown so many times in the playoffs, has more of an advantage than it's ever had in hockey.
What do you think about that, Ryan?
It's pretty interesting because, I mean, coaching it's gotten so much more sophisticated over the years, and we have the analytics to draw on. It is interesting to see how coaches adapt, and we're 2 games into this series, and I'm sure the Panthers are not panicking. They're a veteran club; they've done this before, but they do really have to consider, like, where can we find those little edges in Game 3 to turn this around, because it's been a close series. I mean, it's 1-goal games, the first 2, but there's just a feeling that the Leafs aren't going to screw up. And I think that's something that, no pun intended, the Panthers have been able to pounce on teams in the past, and we've seen them do it against Toronto in past playoffs, that those little edges haven't been there yet. So how do they find them? And maybe different line matchups is one of the ways to do so.
Yeah, I was super impressed with the response last night. Even like the narrative has always been that they've kind of not been able to get over the hump. And like even when Florida, I forget which goal it was, they scored, but then Marner came down and scored. I think it was like 15 seconds late. Like they couldn't have asked for a better response. And
Right.
That's something that I don't know in the past if they would have responded as well as they did. And I thought you got to give them a lot of credit. That was super impressive.
Yeah, we were talking about this last night, Drew, on our Playoff Frenzy Live. Is Toronto has been able to kind of play their physical style, use their speed, and keep it as a high scoring games. And, I wonder if Florida tries to really kind of slow things down and get things back to, a 1-0, 2-1 type of game.
Yeah, I mean, the series has been wide open. You saw it last night. I mean, even Domi, like I felt like a couple times the Leafs were flying out of their defensive zone, and not even on the goal that Domi scored, but they had a 2-on-1 right before that as well. And so there's certainly, I mean, if you're Toronto, they want to stretch the game out and make it as wide open as possible. But I do agree that that's something that Florida, I would try and spend as much time below the top of the circles in the Toronto zone and try and wear down some of their top players offensively.
All right, let's move over to the other series that happened. That's over in the West there. The Dallas Rantanens, as I'm calling them right now. Mikko Rantanen, putting on a display in these playoffs. Like he gets the hat trick in Game 7 against Colorado in that first round series that looked like the Avalanche were going to advance, and then Game 1 against the Jets, it's Mikko Rantanen. All 3 goals in a 3-2 win. I don't know if there's another player right now in the playoffs that's playing at the caliber of Mikko Rantanen. Like I know it's, one game into the second round, but he's already the early Conn Smythe favorite. Have we seen another player really take over in this sort of fashion?
I definitely haven't. And I think there was a stat, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think he's been in on Dallas's last 12 goals scored, like as a team. And then everyone's talking about Game 7 in Game 1, but people are forgetting Game 6 in Colorado. He had 4 points in that period as well. Like Dallas could have easily won the game. It's where I think the forward shot it off his other player, and Colorado ended up winning the game. But I mean, his run is remarkable, and you guys will laugh at this because you've been in the media for so long, but it's so funny how things can change. I mean, 4 games into that series, he had 1 assist. Yeah. People were kind of saying he couldn't really play, like he's not the same player without Makar and McKinnon, and that's what everyone was talking about. And now, as you just said, I mean, he's easily the Conn Smythe favorite.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was kind of.
So go for it.
Oh, I was just going to say, I was kind of joking. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he had won the 50-50 draw at Canada Life Center last night as well. Like everything was going in for him, right? Like things were going off of other people's sticks, and you have to put yourself in those positions to be quote unquote lucky. But it does remind me of that Colorado Tampa Bay Stanley Cup final a couple of years ago, where the Avs were just pushing everything forward. Like it was constant forward momentum. And even if it wasn't like a clean breakout up the ice, the fact that they were playing with such speed just kind of willed everything, and they were getting those bounces because they were in the right positions. And I feel like Rantanen is doing that right now with the puck, where it's like, I'm just going to keep pushing. I'm going to keep getting pucks on net, and good things will happen. And he's getting, he's getting the skill plays done, but he's also getting those good bounces. And I think, the only other player we've seen do something like that was Connor McDavid last year in the final, when Edmonton really needed him to take over so that they could get back into that series against the Panthers. And obviously in the end, they came up just a bit short.
Yeah, you can't really stop guys like McDavid and Rantanen even right now. I don't think there's a way of completely keeping him off the score sheet. You only hope to limit him. But if you're, Scott O'Neill and the Jets right now, like how do you go about, game planning against a guy that's single-handedly just destroying you?
I mean, I think it's the same thing that Florida needs to do to Toronto. I mean, the best way to stop Mikko Rantanen is to make him defend. So I think that's like, I mean, like you said, you can't really stop those guys. They're so good. But I mean, it's the same thing with Connor McDavid. Once he gets the puck with speed. So, I mean, I would really try and have a guy try and like the F3, even in the neutral zone, when he swings back, I would try. I mean, that you have to eliminate him getting the puck, because once he gets the puck coming downhill, you're in big trouble. But they just need to do a better job of spending more time making those guys defend. And I mean, it's easier said than done, but I think that's the only way to do it.
Real quick, the work that Jim Nill's done, it seems like every year we're talking about him as a, candidate for GM of the year. Obviously, his draft record is like impeccable. Like the amount of guys he's been able to find, not just in the first round, but in subsequent rounds. And then this trade, which, I don't want to say it's one-sided or lopsided, because I think Logan Stankoven's doing a great job right now in Carolina. And I even think that, Marty Necas is doing, had a great season, not only in Carolina, but once he was traded to Colorado. But, what are your thoughts on Jim Nill? Is he, does he get enough credit? I know he's in Dallas. Maybe that's part of the reason, but does he get enough credit for being like, the best GM?
I think people talk about it, but like you just said, I mean, I think being in Dallas, I mean, if this was happening in the Canadian market, it would be written about every single day. But I mean, I think he took over the job in 2013, and they've had an amazing team since. I think that he's so well respected and liked by basically everyone in hockey. I think a lot of people have jumped on the Stars bandwagon, and then some of their players too. I mean, I don't know him personally, but a guy like Jamie Benn, who's been in the league for so long and played so hard and been so good, I think that a lot of people are cheering for guys like that to win.
Yeah, I would say that, Jim Nill, he's a really good leader, and he also has really good people around him. We talk about, those draft classes they've had. Joe McDonnell is their head of amateur scouting, and he's done a fantastic job with Jim Nill over the years. You think about those drafts where it was like, Heiskanen, Ottinger, Robertson. You think about Thomas Harley. You think about Wyatt Johnston, who they drafted during the pandemic when there was no OHL season. So they basically had, a bit of a look at Wyatt Johnston at the World Under-18s, and then, whatever video they could find of him skating on his own during that season. So it's pretty incredible, their ability to find really good players, and most of the time not top 10, right? Like Heiskanen, yes, but most of those guys outside the top 10, sometimes out of the top 20. And the only other name I would throw out there is Bill Zito in Florida. You think about Gustav Forsling coming off waivers. You think about, getting Carter Verhaeghe. You think about, Sam Reinhart and like all the players that have come through Florida and been retained by the Panthers. It's pretty incredible, finding the proper role for Sam Bennett. I was talking to Sam Bennett at the Four Nations, and, he was saying, like, coming from Calgary to Florida, he wasn't sure what he was. Was he a center or a winger? And when he got to Florida, he found that role, and, the rest is history.
Yeah, I have so many comments on that. I mean, Sam Bennett was interesting. I was in Calgary when he came and played in the playoffs as an 18-year-old and played a top six, scored a bunch of goals, and was playing how he was playing now. Then his career kind of, I wouldn't say went off the rails, but he spent a lot of the next couple of years on the fourth line. But it was so interesting to have a kid come in and have so much success offensively and then have a bit of regression. So it's great to see him playing the way he is. Going back to Dallas, another guy too, their assistant general manager, Scott White, was the first guy I negotiated a contract with when I became an agent. And he's a guy who's been a finalist for a lot of jobs, and it's just been phenomenal to work with. So Jim Nill has definitely surrounded himself with a lot of good people there within that organization as well.
Awesome. Another organization you played with, Drew, is Carolina. They're ahead 1-0 against the Washington Capitals. A bit of a feisty series, and this has been bad blood going way back. Like, it wasn't too long ago that Ovechkin KO'd a very young Andrei Svechnikov, and then obviously that Jalen Chatfield slew foot on Connor McMichael really like ignited things during the regular season. What are you guys making of this series? Is it like, obviously Carolina's up 1-0, but are we thinking this is going to go 6 or 7?
I think so. And Carolina's a team that is so good during the regular season because they play so fast. I mean, they rim every single puck. They send the offside winger across. And so a lot of times it catches teams off guard during the regular season. And I think the biggest thing for Washington, Tampa's done this really well in the past, is they've kind of taken some of those things away, and Carolina's had a really hard time adjusting. So I think a lot of it comes down to, like, can Washington adjust to handle Carolina's speed? And that'll be interesting. I mean, if you look at Carolina, they like never break out the puck through the middle and stuff. So if they really start taking away the walls and forcing them to do things they're uncomfortable with, it should be a long series.
That's a really good point. And what's interesting for me is I know that Washington was not happy with how they played game one, right? Like, that was not Caps hockey. They barely had any shots on goal. And I think for game two, they're going to come out very differently. And it will be interesting to see how they adjust, and do they try to physically impose their will on Carolina, because we know the Caps have some really big bodies up front. So, Spencer Carberry, he's probably going to win the Jack Adams this year. It'll be interesting to see what he comes out with for game two.
Yeah. And Drew, you played for Rod Brind'Amour. He likes to roll four lines. It seems like maybe that was why a guy like Mikko Rantanen never really found a home there, aside from the fact that he was still kind of sour from being traded. But, whether it's Svechnikov, whether it's Aho, whether it's Seth Jarvis, like they don't just have star players. They've got like a ton of like just grinders that, are willing to go through walls for Rod. What's it like being coached by him?
He was amazing. And I say this, I was pretty much there for 1 year with him because I was on that taxi squad that they had going on during. And he was one of the best people I met in hockey, and is one of those guys that, I mean, you've heard all the stories, but literally we'd be healthy scratched and he'd be doing harder workouts than we were. So he definitely has an ability to drag players into the fight with him. And I think that that's probably for sure his strongest characteristic as a coach, is he just makes guys want to win for him so badly. And he's done a great job of that for so many years. Now, with that being said, their system, and because of the way they play, guys either seem to really flourish in it or really have a hard time. I mean, Mikko Rantanen's a guy who's used to kind of playing a lot of East-West hockey. He was playing a lot with McKinnon and Makar and doing a lot of different dynamic things offensively. And then you go into a system that guys aren't really allowed to stray from, and it's a lot more rims, a lot more chipping pucks. And he's a perfect example of a guy who just couldn't really fit in there. And there's another guy I actually had on my podcast yesterday, Morgan Geekie, was kind of the same thing, a really big body, good shot. Not the greatest skater, is more of a cerebral East-West, like puck moving guy. And certain guys just have a really hard time in that system.
So, Drew, I have a question about Carolina. And, you talk about those systems, and they've had such good regular season teams under Rod Brind'Amour, but the playoff success has been, I'll say, limited. I mean, obviously they typically win a couple of rounds, but we haven't seen them in the cup final yet. They haven't won a cup, during Brind'Amour's coaching tenure. Is there something about the style they play that doesn't translate in the playoffs, or has it just been a matter of they haven't done it yet?
I think it's a combination of both. I think that they play one way all the time, and they've had a very hard time adjusting. Whereas a team like Tampa and Florida, some of these teams can play like many different styles of hockey. And I think that their style is very good. I mean, that's why every year they're one of the top teams in the league, allows them to win one or two playoff rounds. But I think historically over the last 4 or 5 years, they've just really had a hard time adjusting and playing different styles of games. And I think that's one of the things the best teams in the league have been able to do a little bit better than them.
No, it's kind of funny. Like, you look at Carolina's roster, and they got a guy in Sebastian Aho who's listed at 6'1", 180. And I don't know if that's generous or not, because he doesn't look like,
that's generous, I would think.
He doesn't look like the kind of guy that you would think, all right, playoffs come around, he's the guy that you want on your team. But then you look at his stats, like he's got 8 points in 6 games this year. Last year, 12 in 11 games. Basically he always puts up 11 or 12 points in every round, every year of the playoffs. What am I missing here? Like, why is a guy like Aho able to do things that you would think, all right, playoffs come around, this guy's just going to shrink?
I think that everyone talks about the heavy skill in playoffs. And of course, that's what, I mean, people have tried to reinvent the wheel over the last 5-10 years. But I mean, if you kind of look at it, whoever has the most heavy skill normally wins. And I think a lot of people just look at size when it comes to that. But there's certain smaller players in the league who have a heaviness to their game. I mean, I think like Braden Point's a great example of that. Super small in stature, but I mean, you watch him, you guys probably have his puck battle stats and face-off stats and stuff like that. And I think that Sebastian Aho is kind of a great example of a guy who's that, like, he's smaller in actual size, but like plays very hard and plays heavy. So when the playoff big moments do come, he's very well suited for that. And I think that, I mean, there's guys who are 6'3" in the league who don't play very heavy. And there's other guys like Sebastian Aho and Braden Point who are still winning every puck battle and playing with more heaviness to their game. So I think that that's something he doesn't get enough credit for. And he's a really good player.
Awesome. Let's shift things over to the Edmonton Vegas series. Edmonton heads into game 2 tonight, leading 1-0, mostly because two guys, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, are doing McDavid and Draisaitl type things and just, taking over the game. The other big storyline in this series and in this playoffs is, forget about Stuart Skinner. It's Calvin Pickard's net. I don't know if he is going to be able to do what Skinner did last year and lead Edmonton all the way to the final. But what do we think about goaltending in Edmonton? Is it the Achilles heel that's going to prevent them from going all the way and winning a cup, or is it good enough just to get there?
I mean, I think their roster is so good if they just get good enough goaltending, which is crazy to say in the Stanley Cup playoffs because normally you need amazing goaltending to win. But I think they might be like one of the teams who, if they get good enough goaltending, they can do it. And I mean, as you said, it's obviously great for the game of hockey to have two of the world's best players on another deep run. And I mean, even as a fan, when I'm at home at night, there's no one better to watch on TV. So also it's like Calvin Pickard. I mean, his career has been crazy. He's one of those guys who spent a lot of time in the minors. And I think seems like their team, at least in the interviews I've watched, really likes him and is really trying to rally around him.
Yeah, it's really kind of fascinating right now because if you look at the stats, Pickard's save percentage in the playoffs is like 890 something, but Stuart Skinner's was 810. So, obviously, they made the change and it turned out to be the right one, but they're also protecting him very well. Like Calvin Pickard has made 5 starts in the playoffs. He's only faced more than 30 shots once, and that was against the Kings, and it went to overtime. That was 41 shots. So, yeah, I mean, that's a busy night. But otherwise, like, Edmonton is doing a great job of keeping the puck away from Pickard's net, and that's obviously helped gain him some confidence, and he doesn't have to carry a huge load for them. You look at Jake Ottinger, who's only played like 3 more games. He's faced like 120 more shots than Calvin Pickard so far with Dallas. So it's going to be very interesting because at some point, like, are the Oilers going to like slow down in the sense of the playoffs are a long grind and, guys are going to get banged up. Guys are going to, sort of lose a gear. Is that going to come into play, or does Edmonton just keep sort of steamrolling teams and hope that they have enough gas left in the tank by the end? Honestly, it's probably not a bad strategy at this point because it's working pretty well for them.
Yeah, it'd be entertaining to see. I mean, I'm a fan of Calvin Pickard, so I hope this doesn't happen. But if he does have a bad game or bad 2 games, then it's like, okay, then what do you do? Who do you go back to? So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's funny because we talked about this when Colorado won the Cup. Like, at the time, Darcy Kemper wasn't considered one of the best goalies in the world. It's not like the Darcy Kemper that we've seen in the last couple of years now, where it's like, hey, he should be on Team Canada. And then, Vegas wins the Cup and they've had to go through a couple guys. Like, I don't know if you need the prototypical Vezina Trophy winner goaltender to win a Stanley Cup anymore. Like, you could make the argument that you just need adequate goaltending.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but like, you don't even need like one guy anymore. Like, it used to be that you needed one goaltender to win you all 16 games. Yeah. And it's just not the case anymore. Like you talked about Colorado, like Kemper got hurt and Pavel Francouz had to come in and get them some wins. And then you look at the Leafs this year, Stolarz, carries the mail for them for the first round. He gets hurt. Joseph Woll comes in, basically doesn't miss a step in game 2. So it's just a different era.
Yeah, it's funny how that narrative has changed over the years because, like, when Binnington came in and did it in St. Louis, it went to that. Then I felt like it almost shifted a little bit back when Bobrovsky played as well as he did last year on that contract. And now, like you said, and now we're kind of seeing a mixed bag all around the league. But it's just one of those positions that, I mean, more than any other position is guys can get hot at the right time. And I think that there's a lot of guys in the league who are capable of doing it, but it's like you need some bounces to go your way. You need to get hot, and then you need to play well.
Yeah, and injuries play such a big part of it. Like Ryan, you're mentioning with Stolars this year, and then obviously with Kemper a couple years ago, and Vegas right now. Part of the reason why I think people are worried about the Golden Knights is Alex Pietrangelo is questionable for tonight, as well. Pavel Dorofeyev, who had a breakout year for the Golden Knights, is also questionable. I think both missed practice yesterday. How big would these losses be? Because obviously Petro is a guy that sat out from the Four Nations so he could be healthy in the playoffs. And like as I mentioned with Dorofeyev, like you take him out of there, that's a ton of production.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think Petro, is going to be on Team Canada at the Olympics. Has won a Stanley Cup. Is one of the best two-way defensemen in the NHL. So that's a huge loss for them. And goals are hard to score in the playoffs. So anytime you take, did he score 20? I don't know if he scored 20 or 30 this year. The Russian, but that's a huge void. He's obviously a lethal weapon on their power play as well. And Edmonton's starting to roll, and it's just so funny because Edmonton was so dead in round one, and now they're rolling and they're tough to stop when they get hot.
Dorofeyev had 35 goals, by the way.
Yeah, it's great. It's crazy. He played with my brother as a young kid in Magnitogorsk, Russia. So I've actually watched his game probably just from watching my brother before most people knew who he was. But my brother said he's a great guy, so it's happy to see him come over and have that success because you never know how that's going to translate from the KHL.
Nice. Yeah, and going back to Pietrangelo, you talk about stopping McDavid and Draisaitl. He would obviously be a huge factor in doing so. And it's not just that he's out of the lineup; it's that it's not like he's the sixth defenseman and you're just putting a different sixth defenseman in. He's like a number one defenseman. So you're looking at a guy that in the playoffs so far was playing like 22 and a half minutes. I think, only Noah Hannafin has averaged more amongst defensemen on the Golden Knights. And, Caden Korczak played 13 minutes in Petro's absence. So not only are you losing the guy and what he can do, but all of a sudden, like, other players need to play more. And it's not an ideal situation, especially since, this Oilers team, it's heavier than it was last year. When you think about, Evander Kane being in the lineup full time and playing a lot better, and Trent Frederick as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, getting those guys back, kind of like we were talking about with the Leafs, it's like you add two guys who can play like that and play a lot of minutes like that, it completely changes the dynamic of the team. And like you said, I think Petro, the media was saying he was at least sick, which is better than being injured because hopefully he'll come back for a different game. No one knows what it is, but hopefully for Vegas' sake, he doesn't miss more than one if he has to miss tonight.
Awesome. Let's talk World Championships. A lot of stars are heading over to Sweden and Denmark for these World Championships. Everyone from Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, Marc-Andre Fleury are just some of the samplings. Reminds me of 2016 when I covered the Worlds in St. Petersburg and Moscow when, because it was heading into the World Cup that same year, we had Connor McDavid on Team Canada. Brad Marchand was there. Morgan Riley, I think Ryan O'Reilly was there. My point being, with the Olympics a year away, how many of these guys are heading to the Worlds with something to prove? And how, which guys are you looking at? Maybe, for Crosby and McKinnon to, get that sour taste out of their mouth, and some guys maybe just to try to sneak their way onto Team Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually played in the World Championships one year, and so I got so many texts like, how did you get on that roster? But it's because for people who don't know, like you said, it's as you lead up to these big international events, you get better and better players who are willing to go over. Now, I think that, like you said, it kind of goes twofold. It's the guy that, Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon aren't worried about making Team Canada. So I think they're using it as a time to play together and kind of gear up for it. Also, they're both probably a little bummed they're not still playing. But you have a lot of guys. The first guy that came to my mind who the big story on was the Americans not taking was Tage Thompson.
Yeah.
He was left off of the Four Nations roster. I don't know how many goals. He scored a ton of goals again this year. So there's guys like him who are going in to prove that, hey, I deserve a chance to be on that team next year. And I think as a hockey fan, I'm just so fired up because the Four Nations hockey was so good, because we've never seen those guys like McDavid and Matthews and some of those young, I mean, I say younger, but they've been in the league now for like 7-8 years, but those guys haven't gone best on best since they've come into the league with everything getting canceled. So the Olympics is going to be great. And I think it's funny, Ryan Warsofsky's a friend of mine who's coaching the Americans, and it seems like every day Canada's adding like another perennial superstar. So they better start adding somebody pretty quickly.
Yeah. For me, what's very exciting about this tournament is some of the young talent. And one thing I do appreciate about Team USA is that they always bring younger guys, some of whom are like top prospects that aren't in the NHL yet. A part of that, Dylan Larkin actually complained that not enough American stars go to the World Championship. But I like the fact that Zeev Buium is going. It'll be interesting to see if like Isaac Howard gets any reps other than sort of exhibition games, because he's a great young player. But I'm also looking at Team Canada, Macklin Celebrini and Adam Fantilli. Like, these are two players where, sure, they're long shots to make the Olympic team, but just the experience that those two will get being on the same squad as Crosby and McKinnon will be so valuable for them. And I mean, honestly, the way Celebrini played as a rookie, just with his battle level and his ability as a two-way player at 18, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Canada says, you know what, this kid can do everything. We could put him on the fourth line. He'd be happy to be there. Let's bring him. Maybe it's far-fetched. I don't know. But I think at the least him going to the Worlds and Fantilli going to the Worlds will be so good for them. And then the last player I'll mention too, Marco Kasper playing for Austria. Like, he was playing with Larkin and Lucas Raymond in Detroit and, put up some pretty decent numbers. But if the Red Wings want to make the playoffs next year, if they can get even more for Marco Kasper, that would help a lot. And for him to have a role on an Austrian team that, they're going to be a minnow, but he should be getting excellent minutes and excellent opportunity on that squad. It might help him too.
James Hagens isn't going to the Worlds, is he?
Who's that?
James Hagens. He wasn't invited to Team USA.
No.
Okay. I was trying to segue into our next question, which is, Ryan, why is this guy dropped so far down in your rankings and in everyone's rankings? Because, if you had asked heading into the year, I think Hagens was, thought of as, maybe the number one overall pick. And now, will he be in the top three, or do you see him outside the top three?
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if he drops maybe even out of the top five when all is said and done. The main thing is size, really. He's sub 6 foot. I think he's listed at 5'10" and a half. He's basically my size. He's like 5'10" and a half, 177 pounds. He's probably in better shape. I'll go out on a limb there.
Doesn't he need as much Popeyes?
He doesn't have as much Popeyes as I do. Yeah. Probably never been to Burger's Priest. But he had a very good season at Boston College. He had incredible line mates in Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault. He certainly didn't dominate the way like Macklin Celebrini did the year before at BU. And Celebrini didn't have line mates like Hagens did. But oftentimes what happens here, like James Hagens did nothing wrong, right? He won gold at the World Juniors with Team USA. He played pretty well there. And it's more the fact that, we're at the point now, and I've been talking to scouts, I'm talking to agents and everybody, where you look at like an Anton Frondel, who's bigger and stronger, also a center, just helped Djurgården get promoted to the SHL, which was like massive. Like, I was talking to somebody the other day that said that promotion series was the biggest in Swedish history because it was the two big Stockholm teams playing. And then you're starting to hear rumblings about like Brady Martin, Jake O'Brien, these OHL kids who are big, strong two-way guys. And we always know there's surprises on draft day. You look at Beckett Seneca going 3rd overall last year to Anaheim. And I mean, I just watched Seneca live about a week ago, and he's a beast. So when all things come down to it, size matters in the draft, whether it's right or wrong. And I think that's the problem with Hagens is, unfortunately, he's the smallest amongst that sort of top tier.
Hey, Drew, I don't want to ask you about Hagens, but I do want to ask you about Joel Quenneville, who, reports are that he's joining the Anaheim Ducks, and it's been a while since Joel Quenneville's been in the league. I won't go into everything that happened.
We know why.
Yeah, we know why. But, for an Anaheim Ducks team that, I don't know where we consider them in their evolution of the rebuild. Is Quenneville the right coach to kind of maybe get them to that next step?
I think so. And I will say the one thing I know about Quenneville is I've never heard of any player speak badly about him. And in fact, if you ask like 95% of players, I mean, normally you know how it is. A coach, the guys he plays a lot love him. The guys who don't play, I don't like him. But I mean, every guy, when his name comes up within the hockey community or hockey circles who played for him, absolutely loves this guy. I mean, he obviously had a ton of success. He took over Chicago, and they had some really high-end prospects, and they had to put it all together and was able to do that there. So, I mean, I think it's a great fit for them. I think that he's a guy who's going to command a lot of respect just because of his resume and how much he's won from some of these young guys. And I think it's going to be a good fit.
Awesome. All right, hockey fans, why break the bank on sticks when you can get a pro level composite stick without the pro price at sticks.com? That's STIX.com. Head over and gear up. With that being said, we are entering our final and Ryan's favorite segment of the program. We've got some rapid fire. Drew, we're going to go real quick here.
All right, let's go.
Question 1. We now have the Utah Mammoth. So the last 3 expansion teams are the Kraken, the Golden Knights, and the Mammoth. Which recent expansion team has the best name?
Golden Knights.
Any reason why?
I don't know. Just I guess their name fits better with all the success they had from right when they jumped into the league. So maybe that's it. Maybe I'm biased on the name.
Hey, they've been golden ever since they came into the league. Ryan?
It's true. I'm going to go with the Kraken because everybody wanted it to be the Kraken, and it was cool that the franchise actually was like, yeah, we're going to go all in on this. And I just remember the reveal. Everybody was so excited. So, but I do like Mammoth as well. That was my favorite of the remaining names that Utah was looking at.
Yeah, I'm starting to grow. It's starting to grow on me. I was leaning towards Utah HC, but I know you had your issues with that. Second question. McDavid versus Eichel. Regular season aside, who has been the better playoff performer?
It's so tough to say because, I mean, McDavid's been the better performer, but Eichel's won. So, I mean, it depends on kind of how you judge that, right? You know, I mean, you talk about this in all sports. It's like how much of a value do you put on winning? Eichel's won, McDavid hasn't, but I mean, I'm sure his stats are insane, and he's probably dominated a lot of the categories.
Yeah. I will say McDavid, except when he has played against Eichel, because when Vegas eliminated Edmonton, Eichel did an amazing job containing McDavid, and I do remember him getting a takeaway on McDavid that was really crucial late in one of those Vegas victories. So head-to-head, Eichel evens the playing field, but overall, McDavid as an individual, I'll take him.
Yeah,
I just like that this is a conversation now, because when they entered the league, it was 1-2, and no one was saying, hey, do you take Eichel over McDavid? But at the same time, it was 1-2, and then for I don't know how many years, Eichel never was in the playoffs, and now it's like, hey, we got ourselves a debate. So, did you want to add anything, Drew?
Well, I was just saying, Eichel's a guy who is really good at holding onto the puck. So like we talked about, I mean, you're never going to shut down McDavid, but I mean, I'm sure he spends more time with the puck in the offensive zone than 95% of the players in the league. So, I mean, you can't really take it from him once he has it, but you can try and keep it away from him.
All right. Home teams are 3-9 so far in the second round of not only the NHL playoffs, but the NBA postseason as well. 2 of those wins have come from the Maple Leafs. The other one comes from the Oklahoma Thunder. I don't know what team that is, what league that is. No, sorry. Is home ice advantage a real thing, Drew? You've played, obviously. So how big of a deal, especially in the playoffs, is home ice?
I mean, I think it is. And going back to what we talked about earlier, I think it's more just from the last change in hockey matchup thing. I can't really speak for basketball, but the NBA playoffs have had just as crazy of a run out as some of the hockey games. So it's been fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I can think of is that athletes are so much more mentally attuned these days that maybe they can block out the, when they're on the road, they can block out the home fans better than they did maybe 25 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's easier too. I mean, you could also make the argument that it's a little easier to just focus on just hockey when you're on the road. I mean, a lot of guys at home, you're dealing with different things. I mean, I don't know. But I mean, I think that it'll be interesting to see what those stats look like at the end of the playoffs.
All right. Early pick for Conn Smythe. And do I have to say you have to say someone other than Mikko Rantanen?
I was going to say, I think this will be one I don't think any of us can debate.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what? I'm going to throw William Nylander's name out there. And just because, not only is he producing at a clip that, I think he's third in scoring right now, but he's also made, John Tavares and Max Pacioretty really relevant and kind of turning back the clock for both guys.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, yeah. That being said, it's still Rantanen.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of Rantanen, one of the reasons Joe Sakic alluded to why the Avalanche traded Rantanen in the first place is, they were top heavy with McKinnon and Makar's contracts, and they might, be better off with, saving that salary cap space and giving it to 2 or even 3 players. So do you agree? Would the Avalanche be better off with Mikko Rantanen or better depth and balance throughout the lineup?
I mean, I think it's easy to say now. I think it's a little easier to say now that they're missing Mikko Rantanen, but I think anytime you have a chance to sign a player of that ability, you have to do it. I think a lot of teams make mistakes overpaying middle-end depth guys than they do paying the stars. I think that there's enough players in the league who can kind of fill out some of those roles, so I think that they would have been better off keeping Mikko Rantanen.
Yeah, I agree. There's only so many players in the league that can score 100 points in a season. Rantanen's one of them. So you got to hang on to those guys as much as you can.
Yeah,
I'll have one counter argument to that. The year they won the cup, they not only had Mikko Rantanen, they had Nazem Kadri. And I think with the salaries going up after that, you won the cup, like, got to remember McKinnon was signed. They couldn't afford Kadri. And I think that's part of the reason why Colorado hasn't gone as far since then.
But the cap's going up now.
Oh, damn. All right, let's end on a fun one. All right, I work out. My favorite workout pump-up song is, it's always by the band Ghost, and our deputy editor, John Tuvell, loves that. Right now, it's Mary on a Cross. So, Drew, favorite or current pump-up song right now?
Oh, man, this is going to be embarrassing, but this morning my wife actually sent me, there's an Ed Sheeran collab with Da Baby called Two Step. That is great. So that's actually, I didn't think I was going to be getting asked this question, but I had it on a couple times in the car driving home from the gym.
Nice.
Ryan,
nice.
Is it the same one for you?
No, I'm going with the new Turnstile song, Never Enough, which is incredible. And also they played it after one of the commercial breaks during the Leafs Panthers game last night on the broadcast. So I felt like, hey, I'm like vindicated with my choice here that, even the hockey broadcast knows that that's an amazing song for getting pumped up for hockey.
All right. Well, let's get pumped up here. We got lots of hockey tonight. Drew, thanks so much for joining the big show. As always, I'm Michael Traikos. That was Ryan Kennedy. We got lots of action tonight. We'll see you at the rink.
Appreciate you guys. That was fun.